Welcome to the Golden Ancient Tales, your portal to legendary stories, forgotten histories, and timeless mysteries brought back to life. Today, we journey into the life of one of the most powerful and iconic rulers in history, Queen Elizabeth I of England. From her perilous childhood to her remarkable reign as the Virgin Queen, her story is one of courage, intrigue, and unforgettable moments. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment below. Let us know what part of Queen Elizabeth's life fascinates you the most. Elizabeth Tudor entered the world on September 7th, 1533, at Greenwich Palace, a daughter born into a world of privilege, wealth, and power. Her father, King Henry VIII, was one of the most formidable rulers in English history, a king whose desires, whims, and ambitions shaped the destiny of a nation. Her mother, Anne Boleyn, had captured Henry's heart with her intelligence, charm, and defiance of convention. But for Elizabeth, birth was only the beginning of a life fraught with danger, uncertainty, and the harsh realities of a court that was as beautiful as it was lethal. From the moment she took her first breath, Elizabeth's life was overshadowed by politics. Henry VIII's obsessive quest for a male heir dictated the fates of everyone around him, including his children. Elizabeth, as the daughter of Anne Boleyn, was celebrated initially as a promising heir, a girl who might someday secure alliances for England. However, the joy surrounding her birth was short-lived. She was not the son Henry so desperately wanted, and the fragile happiness of the Tudor household was soon to collapse under the weight of ambition, jealousy, and betrayal. Elizabeth's earliest memories were not of comfort or play, but of whispers in shadowed corridors and the constant presence of the court's watchful eyes. Her mother, Anne, was a woman of strong opinions and remarkable intelligence, but she was also fiercely ambitious, traits that ultimately made her a target. In 1536, when Elizabeth was barely 2 years old, tragedy struck. Anne Boleyn was accused of adultery, incest, and treason. She was imprisoned in the Tower of London, her head destined to meet the executioner's axe. The young princess would never again see the mother who had given her life and ambition. For Elizabeth, the trauma of losing her mother at such a tender age left a permanent mark. She was immediately thrust into a precarious position at court. As the daughter of a queen who had fallen from favor, Elizabeth's very existence became a political problem. She was declared illegitimate, her title and claim to the throne stripped, and she was sent away from the royal household into the care of others, many of whom were indifferent at best, cruel at worst. Yet even as a small child, Elizabeth displayed remarkable intelligence and an innate curiosity about the world. She was inquisitive, keenly observant, and unusually composed for someone so young. Those who tutored her noted her sharp mind and her ability to absorb knowledge quickly. She studied Latin, Greek, French, and Italian, languages that would later become tools of diplomacy and power. Unlike many children of the era, she was taught history, theology, and philosophy, subjects that shaped not only her intellect, but her understanding of human nature and political maneuvering. Despite the challenges she faced, Elizabeth possessed a spirit of resilience that would define her entire life. She learned early that survival required caution and discernment. In a court where allies could quickly become enemies, and where whispers could mean life or death, Elizabeth understood the importance of watching, listening, and waiting. She became adept at reading people, gauging their intentions, and responding with precision. Her early experiences of fear and uncertainty would become the foundation for the unshakable queen she would later become. Elizabeth's relationship with her father, Henry VIII, was complex. Though she adored him, she also learned that Henry's favor was fleeting and unpredictable. He could be generous, even affectionate one moment, and merciless the next. She witnessed firsthand the consequences of falling out of favor, and these lessons shaped her approach to leadership. Always calculated, cautious, and self-aware, Elizabeth understood that in a world governed by power, intelligence, and patience were as important as loyalty and bravery. The princess's formative years were also marked by a sense of isolation. She had siblings, including her half-brother Edward and half-sister Mary. But Elizabeth often found herself on the periphery, an observer of family tensions and court intrigue. The Tudor household was not a place of carefree childhood. It was a place of strategy, negotiation, and constant vigilance. Elizabeth learned to entertain herself with books, music, and intellectual pursuits, cultivating a mind as sharp as a blade and a spirit that refused to be broken. Even amidst fear and uncertainty, Elizabeth had moments of joy and fascination. She was drawn to literature, poetry, and stories of heroism and adventure. She delighted in puzzles and wordplay, exercises that honed her reasoning skills and memory. Tutors and governesses marveled at her ability to recall complex passages from classical texts and to articulate ideas far beyond her years. In these early years, the foundations of her future brilliance were laid. A queen who would rely not solely on her birthright, but on intellect, strategy, and a keen understanding of human behavior. The political climate of England also contributed to Elizabeth's education in ways that books and tutors could not. She lived through the rise and fall of her mother, the volatility of her father, and the ever-shifting alliances of the Tudor court. She learned that power was both coveted and dangerous, that loyalty could be fleeting, and that a single misstep could have catastrophic consequences. These lessons, painful as they were, instilled in Elizabeth a resilience and cunning that would later become her greatest assets. By the time Elizabeth reached her teenage years, she had already survived perilous circumstances that would have crushed lesser individuals. She had endured the execution of her mother, the unpredictability of her father's affections, and the constant scrutiny of a court that thrived on gossip and conspiracy. Each challenge strengthened her, and by observing the triumphs and failures of those around her, she began to understand the delicate balance required to navigate life in the royal spotlight. Elizabeth's early experiences were not just about survival. They were about preparation. They molded her into a young woman of exceptional intelligence, poise, and determination. She learned to master her emotions, present herself with dignity, and make decisions with foresight. These traits would define her reign, earning her the respect of allies and the fear of adversaries. In summary, Elizabeth Tudor's childhood was a crucible that tested her courage, intelligence, and resilience. From the shadows of political intrigue to the tragedy of personal loss, she emerged as a young princess who understood the precarious nature of life, the power of knowledge, and the necessity of patience. These early years of peril and observation laid the groundwork for her transformation into Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, a monarch whose reign would leave an indelible mark on history. Even as a child, Elizabeth Tudor's story was already extraordinary, a tale of survival, intellect, and promise that would one day shape the destiny of England and the world. The young princess in peril was not merely surviving. She was preparing for greatness, honing the skills, courage, and wisdom that would one day define one of the most legendary reigns in history. After the turbulent years of her early childhood, Elizabeth Tudor grew into a young woman under the constant shadow of political intrigue and danger. Her life, which had already been shaped by the execution of her mother and the volatile favor of her father, now faced new challenges as England itself became a nation divided by religion, ambition, and the ever-present threat of betrayal. The corridors of the Tudor court were no longer a place for carefree observation. They were a battlefield, and Elizabeth had to learn and navigate them with the skill of a strategist and the caution of a survivor. Elizabeth's position at court had long been precarious. Though she had gained her father's occasional favor, she was still officially declared illegitimate after Anne Boleyn's execution. This meant that her claim to the throne was uncertain, leaving her vulnerable to the ambitions of others. Every smile and compliment could hide a dagger. Every ally could quickly become an enemy, and the young princess learned that she could trust no one completely. She became astute, observing not only the words of those around her, but also the unspoken gestures, the subtle shifts in tone, and the alliances forming behind closed doors. The reign of Edward VI, Elizabeth's half-brother, brought a temporary period of stability. Edward, a boy king, was guided by his advisors, and Elizabeth's own intelligence and education made her a valuable figure at court. She impressed tutors, nobles, and even foreign ambassadors with her knowledge, charm, and wit. Yet even in these moments of relative calm, Elizabeth understood that stability was fragile, and the moment of crisis could arrive at any time. The true test of Elizabeth's resilience, however, came with the ascension of her half-sister, Mary I, in 1553. Known as Bloody Mary for her fervent Catholicism and ruthless persecution of Protestants, Mary viewed Elizabeth as a threat to her throne. The Tudor court became a dangerous arena for Elizabeth. Loyalty and betrayal were constant companions, and rumors swirled that Elizabeth had been involved in plots against her sister, a claim that could have cost her life. In 1554, Elizabeth faced her greatest peril. She was imprisoned in the Tower of London, the same place where her mother had met her tragic end. The tower was cold, isolated, and ominous, a symbol of royal authority and a prison for those who displeased the crown. Elizabeth was not naive. She knew the consequences of falling afoul of Mary. Yet even in the face of such fear, she displayed remarkable composure. She maintained her dignity, carefully choosing her words and actions to avoid giving her enemies a reason to act against her. During her imprisonment, Elizabeth learned crucial lessons in political survival. She observed the intricacies of court politics, the subtle maneuvers of her adversaries, and the importance of alliances. She realized that power was not solely derived from birthright. It required intelligence, strategy, and the ability to read the intentions of others. This period of confinement, though frightening, became an unintended education in statecraft, a preparation for the reign that awaited her. Elizabeth's time in the Tower was not entirely without allies. Key figures, including members of her household and certain courtiers, offered discreet support, helping her navigate the dangers that surrounded her. Their loyalty reinforced another vital lesson. True power depended not only on skill and intellect, but also on cultivating trust and loyalty among those who served you. Elizabeth's ability to inspire confidence, even in a time of uncertainty, would become a hallmark of her later reign. The religious upheaval of the time added another layer of complexity to Elizabeth's life. England was divided between Catholics and Protestants, each faction vying for influence and the favor of the monarch. Elizabeth, carefully educated in both perspectives, developed a nuanced understanding of religion as a tool of governance. She recognized that faith could unite or divide a nation, and that her own beliefs, though personal, would need to be balanced against political necessity. This understanding would later allow her to implement policies that maintained relative stability and avoided the bloody conflicts that had characterized Mary's reign. Elizabeth's adolescence was also shaped by observation and learning from the fates of those around her. She witnessed the downfall of nobles who had overstepped their bounds, the rise of ambitious courtiers, and the subtle interplay of alliances and rivalries. Each event added to her understanding of power, politics, and human nature. She learned that survival often requires strategic patience, the ability to act decisively when necessary, and the skill to conceal one's true intentions until the moment was right. Despite the ever-present danger, Elizabeth remained remarkably composed and intellectually vibrant. She continued her studies with a relentless dedication, excelling in languages, history, theology, and philosophy. Tutors and scholars marveled at her intellect, describing her as wise beyond her years. Yet Elizabeth also learned to temper her brilliance with caution. She understood that intelligence alone could be dangerous in a court filled with envy, ambition, and suspicion. Her ability to combine wisdom with prudence would later define her reign. Elizabeth's personal growth during this period was also marked by a keen awareness of her image. She understood the power of perception and presentation. Her poise, elegance, and careful choice of words allowed her to command respect, even from those who might wish her harm. She cultivated an aura of dignity, composure, and subtle authority that would later become emblematic of the Virgin Queen. Every gesture, every glance, and every word was deliberate, calculated to project strength while concealing vulnerability. By the time she emerged from the shadow of the throne, Elizabeth had transformed from a young princess into a figure of extraordinary resilience and intellect. She had survived political persecution, imprisonment, and the constant threats that accompanied her status as a Tudor princess. These experiences, harrowing as they were, had prepared her for the demands of monarchy. Elizabeth had learned that survival required more than courage. It required foresight, patience, and an unshakable understanding of human nature. In reflection, the shadow of the throne was not merely a period of danger and fear. It was a crucible that forged Elizabeth into the formidable monarch she would become. Her time in the Tower, her navigation of court intrigue, and her careful observation of England's turbulent politics equipped her with skills that would define her leadership. The lessons she learned in secrecy and shadow, about loyalty, betrayal, strategy, and perception, became the tools with which she would later shape the destiny of a nation. Elizabeth Tudor's journey through the shadow of the throne revealed a young woman who was no longer just a princess at risk, but a future queen in the making. Her intelligence, composure, and strategic insight would allow her to rise above fear, adversity, and uncertainty. The trials of her youth were the foundation of her greatness, and from this shadowed period emerged a leader who would command respect, inspire loyalty, and leave an indelible mark on history. In the quiet moments of reflection, Elizabeth must have understood that her survival was not simply a matter of chance. It was a result of careful observation, relentless learning, and extraordinary ability to balance caution with courage. The shadow of the throne had tested her in every way, and she had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to step into the light, into a throne that would one day bear her name as one of England's most legendary monarchs. The death of Mary I in 1558 marked the end of a turbulent chapter in English history and the beginning of a new era, one that would be defined by the intellect, courage, and vision of Elizabeth Tudor. At just 25 years old, Elizabeth ascended the throne, inheriting a nation teetering on the edge of political, religious, and economic uncertainty. The challenges before her were immense, but Elizabeth, tempered by years of danger, observation, and study, was ready to take her place as Queen of England. Elizabeth's rise to power was not simply a matter of inheritance. Though she was Mary's half-sister, Elizabeth's path to the throne had been fraught with peril. Declared illegitimate in her youth after the execution of her mother, she had lived under suspicion and near constant threat. Many nobles doubted her ability to rule. Foreign powers saw England as vulnerable, and factions within the country were divided along religious lines. To ascend successfully, Elizabeth would need to navigate these treacherous waters with the skill of a seasoned diplomat and the courage of a warrior. The young queen's first acts as monarch revealed a deep understanding of the delicate balance required to rule. Elizabeth recognized that her legitimacy as queen needed to be affirmed publicly and that her authority must be established decisively to prevent rivals from challenging her reign. She carefully orchestrated her coronation, ensuring that it displayed majesty, confidence, and divine approval. Every detail, from the ceremonial robes to the speeches and processions, was meticulously planned to convey a sense of permanence and power. One of Elizabeth's first and most crucial decisions concerned marriage. The English people, as well as foreign rulers, expected the queen to marry and secure a dynasty. However, Elizabeth understood the political complexities of such a choice. Marriage could strengthen alliances, but could also compromise her authority and embroil England in foreign conflicts. In a bold and unconventional move, Elizabeth declared herself the Virgin Queen, emphasizing that she would marry only her kingdom and devote herself entirely to her people. This decision was unprecedented and controversial, but reflected Elizabeth's strategic thinking. She would maintain her independence while keeping both domestic and foreign powers guessing. Religion was another urgent matter. England had been torn apart by the oscillating religious policies of Henry VIII, Edward VI, and Mary I. Elizabeth, a Protestant by conviction but pragmatic in approach, faced the daunting task of reconciling a nation divided between Catholics and Protestants. She understood that religious unity was crucial for stability, yet she also recognized that harsh measures could spark rebellion. Elizabeth's solution was the Elizabethan religious settlement, a policy of compromise that established the Church of England while allowing for a measure of religious tolerance. This careful balancing act helped to stabilize the country and solidify her reputation as a thoughtful and intelligent leader. Elizabeth's court was also carefully curated to reflect her values, intelligence, and vision. She surrounded herself with loyal and capable advisors, including Sir William Cecil and Francis Walsingham, men whose wisdom, loyalty, and political acumen helped guide her early reign. Elizabeth was deeply involved in matters of state, reading correspondence, debating policy, and making critical decisions. Though she valued counsel, she ensured that the final authority rested firmly with her. Her active participation in governance set her apart from many rulers of the time and earned her respect at home and abroad. The young queen's early years on the throne were also marked by careful attention to image and symbolism. Elizabeth understood the power of perception, and she cultivated a persona that combined majesty, intelligence, and approachability. Portraits, ceremonies, and public appearances were all designed to reinforce her authority and project an image of strength and virtue. This attention to image was not vanity. It was a deliberate strategy to maintain control and inspire loyalty among her subjects. Elizabeth's ascent to the throne was not without danger. Plots and conspiracies lurked in the shadows, as ambitious nobles and foreign powers tested the young queen's resolve. She faced threats from those who sought to replace her with a Catholic claimant, as well as intrigues within her own court. Yet Elizabeth met these challenges with intelligence, patience, and an unshakable sense of self. She learned to anticipate threats, to read intentions, and to act decisively when necessary. Her ability to navigate these early dangers demonstrated the combination of courage and cunning that would define her reign. Economic and political stability were also priorities for Elizabeth. England faced challenges such as inflation, poor harvests, and strained finances. Elizabeth and her advisors implemented policies to strengthen trade, promote industry, and stabilize a currency. She encouraged exploration and expansion, laying the groundwork for England's rise as a global power. The Queen's vision extended beyond immediate crises. She sought to build a nation capable of enduring and thriving for generations. Despite her youth, Elizabeth demonstrated remarkable wisdom and composure. She combined the experience of her perilous past with a forward-looking vision for her kingdom. Her ability to inspire loyalty, command respect, and navigate complex political landscapes was extraordinary. Elizabeth's ascent to the throne was not simply a matter of inheritance. It was a culmination of years of learning, observation, and preparation. She had transformed adversity into strength, fear into courage, and uncertainty into opportunity. Elizabeth's early reign also highlighted her skill as a diplomat. She carefully managed relationships with foreign powers, avoiding unnecessary wars while asserting England's influence. She used marriage negotiations and alliances strategically, not as ends in themselves, but as tools to maintain independence and strengthen her position. Her diplomatic acumen ensured that England could face external threats without compromising its sovereignty. As Elizabeth settled into her role as monarch, it became clear that her reign would be extraordinary. She combined intelligence, courage, and vision with a keen understanding of human nature and politics. Her early years on the throne set the stage for what would become known as the Elizabethan era, a period marked by cultural flourishing, military achievement, and national pride. Elizabeth's ascension was more than a change of rulers. It was the beginning of a transformation for England. From a nation weary of religious turmoil, political instability, and foreign threats, Elizabeth guided her country toward stability, growth, and prominence on the world stage. She proved that a young woman, tempered by adversity and armed with intelligence and resolve, could command authority, inspire loyalty, and shape history. In reflecting on this pivotal moment, it is evident that Elizabeth's rise to power was a result of careful preparation, extraordinary intellect, and unwavering courage. She had learned the lessons of survival, strategy, and diplomacy during her years in the shadows, and now she wielded them with precision. The young princess who had once been a pawn in the dangerous game of Tudor politics had become a queen in her own right, ready to rule, to inspire, and to leave a legacy that would echo through the ages. Elizabeth Tudor's ascension to the throne was not merely the fulfillment of her birthright. It was a triumph of resilience, wisdom, and vision. The Virgin Queen had emerged from the shadows, ready to lead England into a golden age, and history would remember her as a monarch whose intelligence, courage, and determination defined an era. Once Elizabeth I had firmly established her rule, England entered a period that would later be celebrated as the Elizabethan era, a time of unprecedented cultural, artistic, and political achievement. It was an era in which the influence of one remarkable queen touched every facet of English life. Under Elizabeth's leadership, the nation transformed from a country fractured by religion and political strife into a flourishing, confident, and ambitious power on the European stage. The hallmark of this period was cultural renaissance. England had long admired the great civilizations of Italy, France, and Spain, but under Elizabeth's reign, English arts began to flourish in ways that had never been seen before. Literature, poetry, theater, and music all reached extraordinary heights. Elizabeth herself was highly educated, fluent in multiple languages, and a passionate lover of the arts. Her court became a hub of creativity, attracting writers, poets, playwrights, and musicians who sought her patronage and approval. One of the most iconic figures of this cultural flowering was William Shakespeare. Though he would achieve lasting fame slightly later, the seeds of his genius were nurtured in Elizabeth's England, where theater thrived and audiences were eager for stories of heroism, tragedy, and intrigue. Playhouses like the Globe became centers of entertainment and intellectual exchange, where Elizabethans could witness stories that reflected their world and aspirations. Other playwrights, including Christopher Marlowe, contributed to a golden literary landscape that celebrated human achievement, imagination, and moral reflection. Music, too, flourished under Elizabeth's reign. The Queen herself was a skilled musician and often performed at court, singing and playing the lute. Music was more than entertainment. It was a symbol of refinement, education, and sophistication. Composers wrote intricate works for both court ceremonies and private gatherings, blending innovation with tradition. Elizabeth's personal love of music encouraged creativity and excellence, ensuring that her court became a cultural beacon in Europe. Exploration and expansion were another defining feature of the Elizabethan era. Elizabeth supported and encouraged English adventurers to venture into uncharted waters, seeking trade routes, colonies, and wealth. Figures such as Sir Francis Drake, Sir Walter Raleigh, and Sir Humphrey Gilbert became legendary for their daring exploits, circumnavigating the globe, claiming lands, and challenging the dominance of Spain and Portugal on the seas. These ventures not only enriched England, but also showcased the Queen's vision for a nation that could thrive beyond its shores. Elizabeth's reign also saw remarkable advancements in the navy and military organization. She understood that England's security depended on a strong, disciplined fleet capable of defending the realm and projecting power abroad. Her investments in naval infrastructure and leadership allowed England to withstand formidable challenges, most notably from Spain, and set the stage for future maritime dominance. The Navy was not just a military asset. It was a symbol of England's ambition, confidence, and technological progress. Despite these achievements, Elizabeth's Golden Age was not without challenges. Religious divisions remained a delicate issue. Catholics and Protestants continued to harbor deep-seated grievances, and Elizabeth needed to balance tolerance with authority. She enforced the Elizabethan religious settlement, establishing the Church of England while offering limited concessions to Catholics, a pragmatic approach that reduced civil unrest without alienating the majority of her subjects. Her careful management of religion ensured that England could enjoy a period of stability and unity, essential for the flourishing of culture and commerce. Elizabeth's personal leadership style played a central role in the Golden Age. She was known for her charisma, intelligence, and wit, qualities that inspired loyalty among her advisors and admiration from her people. She combined a commanding presence with subtle diplomacy, understanding that the appearance of strength could be as important as actual power. Her speeches, letters, and public appearances were carefully crafted to project authority, intelligence, and moral integrity. Every gesture, word, and portrait contributed to the image of a queen who was both formidable and virtuous. Economically, England benefited greatly from Elizabeth's policies. Trade expanded, industries grew, and the country's finances stabilized under the careful guidance of her advisors, particularly Sir William Cecil. The Queen encouraged exploration, commerce, and innovation, fostering a climate in which English merchants and artisans could prosper. Ports such as London, Plymouth, and Bristol became bustling centers of trade, connecting England to markets across Europe, Africa, and the Americas. This economic growth not only strengthened the monarchy, but also elevated England's position on the world stage. Elizabeth also understood the importance of propaganda and symbolism in shaping public perception. She was a master of imagery, using portraits, coins, and ceremonies to reinforce her authority and virtues. The Virgin Queen, adorned in resplendent gowns and jewels, became a living symbol of stability, wisdom, and divine favor. The Gloriana image, often depicted in elaborate paintings, emphasized her majesty, intelligence, and purity, a queen who was both human and transcendent. These carefully cultivated images inspired loyalty and admiration, enhancing her power without reliance on brute force. Education and intellectual life also thrived during this period. Scholars, philosophers, and scientists found encouragement at Elizabeth's court, where curiosity and learning were celebrated. Elizabeth herself set an example, engaging in debates, studying classical texts, and fostering an environment in which knowledge was valued. The Queen's patronage of learning ensured that England would produce thinkers and innovators capable of shaping the nation's future. Yet perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the Golden Age was the spirit of possibility Elizabeth inspired in her people. Under her guidance, England moved from the fear and instability of previous reigns into a period of confidence and achievement. The arts, exploration, commerce, and governance all flourished because the Queen understood the power of vision, the importance of nurturing talent, and the value of leadership that combined intelligence with inspiration. The Elizabethan era was more than a period of personal glory for Queen. It was a transformation of a nation. England emerged as a united, confident, and ambitious country, capable of challenging the great powers of Europe. Elizabeth's intelligence, courage, and strategic vision had laid the foundation for this renaissance. She was not merely a ruler. She was a beacon, a figure whose presence inspired achievement, loyalty, and pride. By the end of this chapter in her life, Elizabeth had not only secured her throne, but also transformed her country. The Golden Age was a testament to her leadership, a period in which art, exploration, commerce, and diplomacy flourished under the guiding hand of a queen who understood both the power of intellect and the necessity of perception. Elizabeth Tudor, once a princess in peril and a young woman shadowed by danger, had become the architect of England's brightest era, a queen whose influence would echo for generations. No story of Queen Elizabeth I's reign would be complete without the defining moment of her leadership, the confrontation with the Spanish Armada in 1588, a crisis that would test her courage, intelligence, and the very survival of England. By this time, Elizabeth had ruled for 3 decades, guiding her kingdom through religious strife, political intrigue, and the challenges of governance. Yet even for a queen as wise and capable as Elizabeth, the threat posed by Spain was unprecedented. Spain, under King Philip II, was the dominant European power. Its wealth from the Americas, formidable army, and fearsome navy made it a threat to every kingdom in Europe. Philip, a staunch Catholic, viewed Protestant England not only as a political rival, but as a challenge to religious authority. Elizabeth's Protestant faith and her refusal to marry, combined with her support for English privateers attacking Spanish ships, enraged Philip. For him, the conquest of England was both a political necessity and a religious mission, a crusade to restore Catholicism to the island. The Armada itself was a massive fleet, consisting of over 130 ships and more than 30,000 men, including soldiers and sailors. It was one of the largest naval forces ever assembled in Europe. The plan was to sail across the English Channel, link up with the Spanish army in the Netherlands, and launch an invasion that would dethrone Elizabeth and restore Catholic rule. The threat was clear. England faced a well-armed, disciplined, and determined enemy. For a nation already wary of war, the stakes could not have been higher. Elizabeth, however, was not a queen to cower before danger. She immediately assessed the situation, seeking the best strategy to protect her kingdom. She relied heavily on her trusted advisors, including Sir Francis Drake, Lord Charles Howard, and Sir John Hawkins, whose naval expertise proved invaluable. But beyond military strategy, Elizabeth understood the psychological power of leadership. Her people needed to see a queen who was confident, courageous, and unshakable, someone whose presence would inspire loyalty and bravery in the hearts of her subjects. The Queen's famous speech at Tilbury, delivered directly to her troops, exemplifies her mastery of morale and symbolism. Standing before her soldiers, Elizabeth declared, "I know I have the body of a weak, feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and of a king of England too." These words were not empty rhetoric. They were a carefully crafted message, demonstrating that leadership is not solely about physical strength, but about courage, resolve, and the ability to inspire. The speech galvanized her troops, instilling confidence in a moment when fear could easily have taken hold. As the Armada approached, the English navy took decisive action. Elizabeth's fleet, though smaller and less heavily armed, was faster and more maneuverable, using innovative tactics, including long-range cannons and coordinated attacks. The English harassed the Spanish ships, preventing them from effectively linking up with their army. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's advisors monitored the movements of the Armada, analyzing weaknesses and exploiting opportunities with precision. The weather itself played a crucial role in England's defense. Fierce storms struck the Spanish fleet, scattering ships and causing significant damage. Yet Elizabeth's leadership was a linchpin of victory. Her ability to combine strategic foresight, diplomatic acumen, and moral authority ensured that England remained united and focused under immense pressure. While other rulers might have faltered, Elizabeth's presence reassured her people that their queen could guide them through the storm. The defeat of the Armada was not merely a military victory. It was a symbolic triumph. England, under the leadership of a determined and intelligent queen, had stood against the mightiest empire in Europe and prevailed. The The victory strengthened Elizabeth's authority at home and abroad, earning her admiration from allies and respect, even from former enemies. The Queen's reputation as a wise, courageous, and capable leader was cemented, and her status as one of England's greatest monarchs was assured. The consequences of the Armada extended far beyond immediate military outcomes. England's victory allowed the country to pursue its maritime ambitions with renewed confidence. Explorers and privateers, encouraged by Elizabeth's support, expanded trade and claimed territories, laying the foundations for England's future empire. The arts, commerce, and diplomacy all benefited from a sense of national pride and security that the Armada's defeat fostered. Elizabeth's leadership had not only defended the kingdom, but also enabled its growth and prosperity. Elizabeth's personal involvement in the crisis exemplifies the qualities that defined her reign. She combined courage with careful calculation, confidence with humility, and charisma with intellect. She understood that leadership is as much about symbolic power and inspiration as it is about strategy and governance. Her ability to project authority, while remaining approachable and relatable, inspired unwavering loyalty among her subjects and advisors alike. The Spanish Armada also served as a lesson in Elizabeth's approach to diplomacy and statecraft. She recognized that military might alone could not secure England's future. Alliances, negotiation, and perception were equally important. She cultivated relationships with foreign rulers, carefully balancing power and influence, and used her victory over Spain to strengthen England's position in Europe without overextending her resources. Her foresight ensured that England emerged from the conflict stronger, more confident, and prepared for challenges ahead. In retrospect, the defeat of the Spanish Armada represents one of the defining moments of Elizabeth I's reign. It was a triumph born not only of tactical skill, but of vision, courage, and unshakable leadership. The young woman who had survived peril in her youth, navigated the shadows of the Tudor court, and ascended the throne with intelligence and poise, had now faced the greatest external threat to her nation, and emerged victorious. Elizabeth's victory against Spain solidified her legacy as a monarch who combined intellect, strategy, and charisma to protect her kingdom. She had transformed England from a nation wary of foreign dominance into a confident power capable of influencing events on the world stage. Her leadership during the Armada crisis became legendary, inspiring generations of leaders and citizens alike. By the end of 1588, England had not only survived the threat of invasion, but had also gained a renewed sense of identity and purpose. Elizabeth's leadership ensured that the kingdom's golden age continued, with cultural, economic, and political achievements flourishing under her guidance. The triumph over the Spanish Armada was a testament to the Queen's ability to turn adversity into opportunity, cementing her place in history as one of the most remarkable rulers the world has ever known. While Elizabeth I is often remembered as the Virgin Queen, her personal life was far from simple. Behind the regal gowns, crowns, and jewels lay a woman navigating one of the most complex courts in European history, a court filled with ambition, intrigue, love, betrayal, and endless political maneuvering. Elizabeth's mastery of diplomacy extended not only to foreign powers, but to the delicate dance of courtly relationships, where every word, glance, and decision could determine the fate of her throne. Elizabeth's reputation as a woman of intelligence, beauty, and charisma made her an object of fascination for rulers, nobles, and suitors alike. Throughout her reign, she received countless proposals of marriage from kings, princes, and influential nobles across Europe. Each proposal was not merely a matter of romance. It was a strategic tool used to secure alliances, influence international relations, and strengthen England's position in Europe. Elizabeth understood this, and she wielded her desirability as a political instrument, carefully considering the potential gains and risks of any marriage. One of the most famous figures in Elizabeth's personal and political life was Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester. Dudley had been a childhood friend, confidant, and trusted advisor. Their relationship was the subject of endless gossip, fueled by rumors of affection and deep personal attachment. Yet Elizabeth, ever aware of the political stakes, never allowed personal feelings to compromise her independence. While her bond with Dudley may have been genuine, it also served as a subtle tool in her diplomatic strategy, keeping rivals uncertain about her intentions. Elizabeth's unmarried status, though unconventional for a monarch, became a defining aspect of her reign. By remaining single, She maintained absolute authority and avoided the complications that marriage would bring, including the potential influence of a foreign husband or the risk of a rival claiming power through her children. Her choice reinforced her independence and ensured that all alliances were based on negotiation, not obligation. The Virgin Queen, as she became known, skillfully turned societal expectations into a source of political strength. Court life under Elizabeth was a stage for intrigue. Nobles, courtiers, and advisors were constantly vying for influence, favor, and power. Letters written in secrecy, whispered conversations in shadowed halls, and subtle manipulations behind closed doors were all part of the daily rhythm of governance. Elizabeth, however, had honed her ability to read people and situations. She could detect loyalty, deceit, ambition, and envy with remarkable accuracy. Her intelligence, combined with careful observation and intuition, allowed her to navigate these treacherous waters with grace and authority. One of Elizabeth's most important advisors, Sir William Cecil, played a critical role in managing the political intricacies of the court. Cecil's wisdom, discretion, and loyalty made him invaluable to the Queen. He guided Elizabeth in matters of diplomacy, statecraft, and internal security, helping her to address threats both real and imagined. Another key figure, Francis Walsingham, served as her spy master, uncovering plots against the Queen in England and ensuring that Elizabeth remained steps ahead of her enemies. Together, these advisors helped Elizabeth maintain a delicate balance of power, allowing her to rule decisively while mitigating risk. Elizabeth's diplomacy extended far beyond England's borders. She skillfully managed relationships with some of the most powerful monarchs in Europe, including Philip II of Spain, Henry III of France, and James VI of Scotland. Marriage negotiations, gifts, letters, and subtle political maneuvering were all tools in her arsenal. Elizabeth used the prospect of marriage as a diplomatic lever, keeping foreign powers engaged, uncertain, and often dependent on her decisions. She understood that her personal life could serve the broader interests of her nation, and she wielded this power with finesse. Despite the focus on diplomacy, Elizabeth's reign was also filled with personal challenges and temptations. Courtiers sought her favor, foreign envoys attempted to woo her, and ambitious nobles maneuvered to secure positions of influence. Every decision she made, every action she took, was scrutinized by the court and the public alike. Elizabeth's ability to maintain composure, manage perception, and assert authority was extraordinary. She knew that a single misstep could jeopardize her reign, yet she approached each challenge with intelligence, poise, and strategic foresight. Conspiracies and plots against Elizabeth were frequent, both from within and beyond her borders. Catholics within England, loyal to Mary, Queen of Scots, saw Elizabeth's Protestant rule as illegitimate and sought to replace her. Foreign powers, too, viewed her as a threat to their ambitions. Elizabeth's response was a combination of vigilance, intelligence gathering, and decisive action. She understood that a monarch's strength lay not only in armies and wealth, but in the ability to anticipate threats and neutralize them before they materialized. Her network of spies and informants, under Walsingham's direction, was essential in uncovering plots, ensuring that Elizabeth remained secure on the throne. Elizabeth's ability to combine diplomacy, strategy, and personal charisma defined her rule. She understood that leadership was a delicate balance of perception and reality. While she projected an image of confidence, intelligence, and virtue, she was constantly calculating, evaluating, and adjusting to the shifting dynamics of court and international politics. Her Virgin Queen persona was not merely symbolic. It was a strategic decision that allowed her to maintain independence, inspire loyalty, and manage the ambitions of those around her. The Queen's handling of personal relationships also reflected her remarkable understanding of human psychology. She knew when to inspire trust, when to maintain distance, and when to assert authority. Elizabeth could charm and manipulate with subtlety, using her wit, intelligence, and presence to navigate delicate situations. Her interactions with courtiers, diplomats, and foreign rulers demonstrated a keen ability to balance emotion and strategy, ensuring that her decisions always served the greater purpose of preserving her throne and securing England's future. In reflecting on Elizabeth's life during this period, it becomes clear that her personal choices were inseparable from her political strategy. Her avoidance of marriage, her careful cultivation of alliances, and her navigation of court intrigue were all expressions of her intelligence, foresight, and political acumen. Elizabeth had transformed the challenges of love, ambition, and intrigue into instrument of power, using them to reinforce her authority and protect her kingdom. By the end of this chapter of her life, Elizabeth I had mastered the art of ruling both in public and in private. She had turned the potential vulnerabilities of gender, youth, and personal desire into strengths, demonstrating that leadership is not only about force or birthright, but about wisdom, strategy, and the careful management of perception. The Virgin Queen had emerged not only as a monarch of remarkable ability, but as a symbol of resilience, intellect, and sovereign authority, a leader capable of guiding her nation through perilous times with grace and determination. Elizabeth's reign would continue to be defined by her brilliance in diplomacy, her courage in the face of danger, and her mastery of political intrigue. Love, ambition, and loyalty would intertwine in complex ways. But through it all, Elizabeth remained the ultimate strategist, ensuring that her throne, her people, and her legacy were protected for generations to come. After 45 years on the throne, Elizabeth I left an indelible mark on England and the world. Her reign, known as the Elizabethan era, was a period of remarkable achievement, resilience, and vision. Yet beyond the triumphs, wars, and diplomacy, Elizabeth's true legacy lies in the careful balance she maintained between power, wisdom, and personal resolve, a balance that allowed one of history's most extraordinary monarchs to endure and thrive. Elizabeth's death on March 24th, 1603, marked the end of an era, yet the impact of her leadership extended far beyond her lifetime. She had guided England through turbulent times, navigating religious divisions, foreign threats, and political intrigue with intelligence, courage, and vision. By the time she passed, England had grown into a confident, united, and culturally vibrant nation, ready to assume a prominent role on the global stage. Central to Elizabeth's legacy was her ability to preserve England's independence and stability. Throughout her reign, she faced continuous threats from Catholic powers, rebellious nobles, and ambitious rivals. Yet her careful diplomacy, strategic use of intelligence, and decisive military actions, most famously the defeat of the Spanish Armada, ensured that England remained sovereign, secure, and respected across Europe. Unlike many rulers who relied solely on force, Elizabeth understood that a nation's strength came as much from wisdom and strategy as from armies and fortifications. Elizabeth's cultural contributions are equally remarkable. Under her reign, England experienced a renaissance in the arts, literature, music, and theater. Figures like William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, and composers such as William Byrd thrived in her court, creating works that continue to shape English culture and literature today. Elizabeth's personal appreciation for the arts fostered an environment in which creativity flourished, leaving a legacy that extended far beyond politics. Her court became a center of innovation, intellectual discourse, and artistic brilliance, establishing England as a cultural leader in Europe. Education and intellectual growth were also central to Elizabeth's vision. She herself was a scholar, fluent in multiple languages, and well-versed in classical texts, theology, history, and philosophy. Her example inspired others at court and across the kingdom to value knowledge, learning, and critical thinking. Elizabeth's reign encouraged the pursuit of innovation, scholarship, and inquiry, planting seeds that would contribute to England's scientific and intellectual advancements in the centuries to come. Elizabeth's approach to religion also contributed to her enduring legacy. By implementing the Elizabethan religious settlement, she managed to navigate England through years of sectarian conflict, establishing a Protestant church while allowing for a degree of tolerance. Her policies promoted relative peace in a time when religious divisions had devastated other nations. This pragmatic and balanced approach not only strengthened her authority, but also created a stable foundation for England's social and political development. Perhaps the most iconic aspect of Elizabeth's legacy was her personal example of leadership. She demonstrated that strength, intelligence, and independence could coexist with dignity, charisma, and moral authority. Elizabeth's deliberate cultivation of her public image, the Virgin Queen adorned in majestic robes, jewels, and symbolic regalia, projected an aura of both power and virtue. She showed the world that a monarch's influence extended beyond policies and armies to the very perception of their character. This mastery of public image and symbolism became a hallmark of her reign and an enduring example of leadership for future generations. Elizabeth's careful handling of her personal life, particularly her decision to remain unmarried, was also revolutionary. In an era when monarchs were expected to marry for political alliances, Elizabeth chose independence. Her virginity became both a political tool and a symbol of her dedication to England. By marrying her kingdom rather than a foreign prince, she maintained absolute control over political decisions, avoided external influence, and kept rivals uncertain. This decision reinforced her sovereignty and demonstrated a unique understanding of power that continues to fascinate historians and the public alike. The Queen's diplomatic and political strategies left an enduring imprint on England's international standing. Through shrewd alliances, skillful negotiation, and the careful cultivation of relationships with other European powers, Elizabeth ensured that England was recognized as a force to be reckoned with. Her reign laid the groundwork for future expansion and the eventual establishment of the British Empire, shaping the course of global history. Elizabeth's legacy was also deeply human. She inspired loyalty, devotion, and admiration among her subjects, advisors, and allies. Her ability to combine strength with compassion, strategy with empathy, and intelligence with inspiration created a sense of unity and purpose within the kingdom. People remembered not only her achievements, but also the dignity, courage, and presence she brought to her role. Elizabeth became more than a queen. She became a symbol of England itself, resilient, ambitious, and confident. Her death marked the end of the Tudor dynasty, but it was also the beginning of a new chapter in English history. The crown passed to James VI of Scotland, uniting the crowns of England and Scotland and ushering in the Stuart era. Yet the principles, cultural achievements, and political foundations Elizabeth had established endured. The nation she nurtured and strengthened continued to grow in influence, culture, and global power, a testament to the effectiveness of her reign. Elizabeth I's story is one of transformation, of a princess in peril becoming one of the greatest monarchs in history. She turned early hardships into resilience, danger into strategy, and political intrigue into enduring power. Her reign demonstrated that leadership is not merely inherited. It is earned through intelligence, courage, vision, and an unwavering understanding of human nature. The Virgin Queen's life remains a study in the art of governance, diplomacy, and personal mastery, a blueprint for rulers and leaders across the ages. Even centuries after her death, Elizabeth I continues to captivate the imagination. Her image, her speeches, her decisions, and her life story resonate because she embodied a rare combination of vision, intellect, and moral authority. She governed with wisdom and pragmatism, inspired cultural achievement, navigated political and personal intrigue with unmatched skill, and ultimately left a legacy that shaped the course of England and the world. In the end, Elizabeth Tudor's reign reminds us that greatness often emerges from adversity. The child who survived the execution of her mother, the princess who endured the shadow of the throne, and the young queen who assumed power in a divided nation became a symbol of strength, intellect, and resilience. The Virgin Queen's legacy is a story not just of power, but of vision, courage, and the extraordinary potential of a single individual to change the course of history. Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, may have lived centuries ago, but her influence endures in literature, culture, politics, and the imagination of the world. Her life is a testament to the power of resilience, intellect, and strategic vision. The legacy of the Virgin Queen continues to shine, a golden thread in the tapestry of history, inspiring generations to come.